This morning I'm going to talk about growing more grass, and to put it in context, we don't grow enough grass in this country. On average, we're growing about 7 tonne of grass dry matter on the average farm, and really we can focus on producing 14 to 15 tonnes of grass dry matter on farms. There's 4 key things that I want to address in growing more pasture. That's improving soil fertility, improving ryegrass content on the farm, grazing management, and reducing poaching damage. In the last couple of years we've seen a decline in soil fertility. We know that about 60% of farms are lime limiting, and also there's about 60% of farms are in soil index 1 and 2. It's very easy to address soil fertility with some soil fertility management, and the responses in soil fertility are quite high. If you go from soil index 1 to soil index 3, you're growing between 1.5 and 3 tonne of grass dry matter. Moving forward into increasing perennial ryegrass content on farms, we know that perennial ryegrass dominant for swards that you'll see here today in Moorepark, we know that they are more dry matter, they can produce more grass, they are more nutrient efficient, and a lot of farms in the country are losing money by not having high perennial ryegrass content pastures. If you look at this graph here, we can see that there's about a 3.5 tonne difference in perennial ryegrass content between a 10% perennial ryegrass content sward and 100% perennial ryegrass content sward. And most of the difference in dry matter production is actually in the mid-May period. Moving on to grazing management, we find mid-season grazing management is crucial to growing more pasture. And the targets here that we're talking about today are targeting a pre-grazing herbage mass of 13 to 1600 kilos of grass dry matter, and you're going to see this demonstrated in the grass demonstration here with John Marr and a number of the Teagasc advisors. And like last season in 2012, we saw a lot of poaching on farms, and the net production loss of poaching on dryland farms is quite small. Actually, there's a limited effect on the cumulative dry matter production of the year, but actually on wetland farms, if you have an April poaching event, it actually reduces the cumulative dry matter production for that sward for the year by about 34%. If it happens in October, it reduces the following season's production by about 19%. But however, the killer is if there's 2 poaching events in the season, that reduces overall grass dry matter production by about 50%, which has crippled farms in the last year. And the prevention of poaching is on-off grazing, having a farm infrastructure that you'll see today, and a number of the stands will go through it, and you have to be flexible in grazing. If the problem is there, if you have poaching damage on farms, you're going to have to fix it. And there's a very simple way of fixing pasture, is by overseeding, chain harrow it, stitch it in, then graze it tight, use about 6 to 8 kilos of tetraploid seed, 1.5 to 2 bags of 10-10-20, and a light roll. So putting it in context, where are we in 2013 year to date? Annually, by this time of the year, we'd expect to have grown about 55% of the total grass production, and about 45% is left behind. In actual fact, year to date in 2013, we have grown about 45% of our grass production, and we think there's about 55% left to grow. So what are the key things that you need to do to grow more grass for 2013? You have to measure your farm cover and you have to budget it. We think there's a real economic response to applying nitrogen from now on, as there was earlier on, and the nitrogen responses are very high mid-season and in autumn. About 20 kilos of grass dry matter in response to mid-season nitrogen, and about 15 kilos to autumn nitrogen. We think you need to increase rotation length by about 1.5 days a week from late July onwards. And for example, if you're on a 21-day rotation on the 20th of July, we want you to be on a 35-day rotation the 10th of September. That's really the target that we want you to be hitting to grow more grass in the autumn. And finally, the final target would be to remove all surplus grass by the end of August. If it's not removed by the end of August, it's going to deteriorate your growth rate too much in September, and you're basically going to run out of grass too early in the autumn. There's 4 messages from this board today. 1, improve your soil fertility and manage your soil fertility. Increase the perennial ryegrass content of your farm. Focus on pre-grazing yield targets mid-season 13 to 1600. And finally, the last one is reduce poaching damage.